got a little bit of an unfair advantage here today because John Hield's in Ogden today in our office. He came to visit us. And so I said,
so he's listening in?
Well, he's not listening in. I just said, hey, I'm meeting with Buddy like here shortly for a PodCasket episode. And I said, what questions do I need to ask him? And he took it easy on you, but he's like,
okay,
but I'm going to start with him because he said, first off, he's like, where's Waldo? Or like, he's like, you got to ask him where he just came from and where he's going next. Cause it's like you're a world traveler. So
yeah, we just came back from skiing in Austria and spent a few days in Iceland. And in a few months, we're on our way to Torre del Paine in Chile.
No way.
But in the meantime, I'm back here in the office in New Hampshire with 4 feet of snow.
Oh man, seriously?
Yeah.
Do you have, as part of your fleet, do you keep like plows, or do you have a contract with the company?
We have a contractor with all of our locations, depending on where they are. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So do you keep track of like how many countries you've been to though? Like, do you have like a
I
running
do. There's
tally?
an app. Yeah, I think it's like 97 or something. I mean, it's a lot.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of. Well, fair warning. My wife and I have a rule. You have to have at least spent a night in order to have it count. Like going through an airport doesn't count.
Yeah.
But we also count principalities. So like Monaco or Vatican City or San Marino. So those count. At least in our world, they count. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Can you stay the night in the Vatican? Like within the
in Vatican City? Sure. Yeah.
Vatican City?
I mean, it's right in Rome. So that's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So I mean, with
I've never
97
actually
countries,
stayed. I've never been invited to stay actually in the Vatican. No.
Yeah, that's right. Invitation only.
Yeah.
What's your favorite? I mean, is there a country where you're just like, you got to go there?
It depends on what we're doing. I mean, if we're skiing versus we've been to Africa 6 times, I have a hard time detaching from work. And when you're out in the middle in the bush and you have no cell phone service for 3 or 4 days, and you're just with wild animals, and you're just sitting in a Defender or Land Rover, and just watching these, nature take its course. To me, it's very relaxing. But no, not really. No, I mean, I loved Argentina, Portugal. I really enjoyed. That was a big surprise. And as I said, we've been to probably 8 or 9, 10 different African countries. So yeah, they're all great. No shitty country that I've been to yet. Right.
And will this be your first visit to Chile, or like?
Yeah, we have not been. We've done most of South America, but we've not been to Chile yet. And my wife, for some strange reason, wanted to go to Easter Island to see those giant Moai statues.
For sure.
And I said, sure, that's great. We'll add it to the agenda, not realizing it's a 6-hour flight from the mainland. So to appease her, we're spending about 4 days of our trip between travel and going out over there. So yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, it's like we're in California. Let's stop off in Hawaii, kind of a thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh yeah, we're in LA. Let's just let's just go to Boston for a few hours and see. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy cow, that is crazy, man. Geez. Well, that's awesome, man. Let me recommend Guyana if you haven't been there yet.
No, I haven't been
South
there.
America. No, you don't want to go there. I'm kidding. I lived there for a little bit, and it was it's just wild.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
French Guyana or Guyana?
Guyana. I went to French Guyana too. It's a little nicer. The French kind of like take more control of that country, and had like nice roads and stuff. But Guyana, it's like going back in time like 100 years. It's crazy, but most people don't even know it's there. It's like it's like country in South America nobody knows exists. But anyway,
like Senegal.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's so cool. So the other thing I need to ask you about too is apparently you are or were recently still in a competitive men's hockey league.
Still playing twice a week. I actually have the trophy. We won it this year right outside of my office. So yeah, still play on Thursday mornings, a fun league, and then on Friday nights a competitive league. Yeah.
Oh, that
Yep.
is so
It's
awesome.
fun. We play with a lot of Division 1 guys, Division 3 guys, some younger guys, and they take it easy on us. It's just a fun thing. So
Yeah, no one's getting in fights and checking each other hard and all
they're
that.
getting in fights. We're getting in fights. Yeah. Usually 3 or 4 people a year get thrown out of the league. Yeah. You just can't help it. But David goes out drinking after, and wives go, and so you're fighting with someone in the second period, and you're sitting down with the beer, an hour later with them. So it's fun.
What is I don't watch a ton of hockey, but what is it that really causes all the fights? Is it just somebody elbows you or hits you with what is it that sort of escalates to a fight?
It's everything. Someone whacks your goalie, someone hits one of your better players, you trip someone or you spear them. It really doesn't take a lot to get people all upset. Yeah, it's just even at our age, it's just it's, even though we're all horrible now, it's just still very competitive, and you're trying to play like you did when you were in your 20s, and you're in your 60s, but it's just a lot of fun.
That is so awesome. It's got to be like an extreme workout too, I think, right? Like I feel like playing really hockey a couple times a week to be enough.
Skating as hard as you can for a minute and a half, and sitting down, and then 2 minutes later going back out again. Yeah, it's a great workout. It's a really good cardio workout. Yeah.
Man, no, that's awesome. I've never played ice hockey, so yeah.
It became a point in time where both of my boys were playing in a junior program, and I was still playing, and my daughter wasn't, but my wife felt out of place, so she decided to join a women's team. But before she started to learn to play hockey, she never knew how to skate. She grew up in LA, and so she joined to learn a skate program. Then she a women's hockey league. So at one point 4 of the 5 of us were playing on Friday nights. So it was
gosh, that's fun. So awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little about your family then. Kids.
So we have 3 kids. Our oldest is a nurse practitioner, lives in New Hampshire, actually married to our GM. He was not in funeral service. He was working for an import-export company in Boston and wasn't happy, and recruited him around 7 or 8 years ago back here. My youngest son, John, is our controller, has a degree from George Washington in economics and accounting. And then my youngest son, Griffin, he lives in Manhattan, just finishing up his master's at Georgetown in real estate development, and is working for he was working for a real estate development company, but the company has a lot of government contracts, and because of Doge, they just lost 90% of their contracts, and so he's out of a job. So if anyone hears this and wants a very bright 29-year-old who lives in Manhattan with a master's in real estate development, he's your guy. So
wow, man, that's too bad. Dang, 90%. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna now start. Thanks for sharing that. Let's start from the beginning here, kind of like where you're from, where you grew up, your family life growing up, school.
Yeah, so I grew up in a French Catholic, French-speaking community in Manchester, New Hampshire. All 4 of my grandparents actually grew up and lived outside of Montreal. My great-grandfather actually moved to New Hampshire and had no experience in funeral service, and ended up becoming the local funeral director at one of the towns. And then my dad, and then myself, I had no interest, like a lot of kids, worked in the family business during college. And after college, I told my dad, I have zero interest in working in funeral service. I want to go to graduate school, get an MBA, and work in finance. And he said, oh, that's great. I'll pay for it as long as you go to mortuary school. And I said, well, why would I go to mortuary school if I have no interest in even coming back to New Hampshire and working in funeral service? He said, just because. And if I'm going to pay for graduate school, then you got to go to mortuary school. I'm not an idiot. So I decided to say, sure. So I actually went to mortuary school at the old New England Institute in Kenmore Square in Boston, right by Fenway. Did that, got it over with, and got my master's at George Washington in DC, and then ended up getting a really, really cool, probably the best job I've ever had, even compared to what I'm doing now. Working for Deloitte Consulting. Back in the day, it was Two Schross, and they merged with Deloitte and Touche, Deloitte Touche, and then it's Deloitte Consulting, working all over the world with amazing, probably the brightest people that I've ever worked with in my life. And it was just a fun time. This is back in the mid '80s, and just traveling around and getting exposure to businesses and processes and systems and metrics. And it was lots of fun. And then back in 1989, my dad called me up and said, I'm getting ready to retire, and I think I'm selling to Lowen. At the time, Lowen was still actively pursuing funeral homes throughout the country, especially in the Northeast. And if you're interested in coming back and buying it, now would be the time. He was doing maybe 190 funerals a year in a couple locations in New Hampshire, Manchester, the biggest city. And I said, thanks. I was making way more money than I probably should have, back then, working for Deloitte. And my wife at the time, who's still my wife, said, I don't want to raise my kids in DC. Let's move to New Hampshire. So she went out, and we moved back in beginning in 1990 and took over a 190 call business and was doing the embalmings and the transfers, and all the stuff you normally do as 190 small traditional funeral home. And so that's how we started.
That's probably an interesting transition. What were some of the types of projects you were working on with Deloitte?
So I was mainly working for the head of our telecom, national telecom partner. So my background was finance, but so a lot of technology stuff. I'm sure no one ever remembers this. We were working on the first ISDN trials, integrated services digital network, a little geeky, but that's when the phone companies, the telcos, first decided that they could actually put data through the phone system, not just voice. And so now we have the internet. That was way before public internets. Did a lot of that. We actually did a lot of modeling student loan bond portfolios to try to model default risk. And that was invaluable experience because it taught me the benefits of understanding projections and financial modeling. So, and then we did a lot of work with big financial Merrill Lynch. I think I spent 2 years in Manhattan working for Merrill Lynch on a huge financial project for them. So that was pretty much what we did for the 7 or 8 years that I worked there with them.
No, that's awesome. Have you ever run into another funeral director that has consultant background like that?
Not yet. I've ran a lot of funeral directors, a lot of other interesting backgrounds, but not management consulting. No.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure someone's out there, but.
Well, and I think that kind of speaks to just as we've gotten to know each other over the last several years. I mean, you're always very interested in the data, more so than most, I would say, customers that we work with. And how has that kind of played well into the success you've had with funeral homes, would you say?
I think it's allowed us to do a better job to measure everything we do. We've sort of taken our business and have driven it down to the lowest common denominator, which is all the different processes that we have. In each process we measure, and is it effective and is it efficient? A perfect example, when I speak to others, I've done consulting work with other funeral homes and friends of mine and other folks. And, for example, a very easy one to think of is shopping calls. So every funeral home gets shopping calls. And, people are saying, hey, my dad passed and we're interested in this or this. And, they'll call around. So you talk to funeral, do you get shopping calls? Oh, sure, we get shopping calls. Do you retain? Do you win? Oh, yeah, we win some of them. Well, what's some of them? I don't know, a good amount. Okay. How many do you get a month? I don't know, a handful. Yeah. So we have a whole process around shopping calls where we have a shopping call team. It's put into a team spreadsheet. We ask pertinent questions at the end of every month. We follow up. Did we win the call? And one of the things we actually started doing, we realized a few years ago, is that the calls that we were not retaining were the calls at local funeral homes. In other words, hey, my dad passed away. We called funeral home XYZ, and they want $4,000 for cremation, and that's too much money. And that funeral home certainly didn't want to lose the call, and they certainly didn't want to lose the call to us. We do about close to 30% of all the deaths in the state of New Hampshire and about 20% in Vermont. So we don't want to lose a call to us. And so they would reduce their price a little bit. And if family said, well, if we go to you, yes, I'll save some money, but we got to pay their transfer fee and this, and we'll just keep my debt. So we realized that one of the barriers with families. So we decided to start saying, well, we'll pay the other funeral home's transfer fee. And so again, we wouldn't have known that had we not measured that and realized that the calls that we were not winning had a higher percentage if they were at another funeral home versus a hospital versus a nursing home, medical examiner's office or something. So that's just, one example of the importance of looking at your processes and systems and measuring things and because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So to get in the weeds on that a little bit, are you recording calls and then playing them back, listening to them, or is it more like note taking as they're on the call, or how do you actually handle the process?
We have it's note taking. We're not recording the calls. We have a spreadsheet that we've identified sort of the key areas that we need to capture, and we're doing follow-ups with the families. Nothing overly sophisticated. It's just capturing some basic data points so we can make some educated decisions down the road of what we're doing well, what we aren't doing well, what we need to change in our process.
That's really cool.
And that's sort of what we're doing. And I think a lot of funeral homes have the thought like, oh, it's a shopping call, it's a direct cremation, we'll just give that to the apprentice. We'll let them do that because, who cares? No, I want my experience. That is, if I'm in the building, which even though I travel a lot, I'm in the building a lot. When I'm here, I'm 60, 70 hours a week. And when I'm out, I'm out. But I want those calls. So I take almost all the shopping calls if I'm in one of our locations. Because to me, that it's not if they're going to need a funeral home, it's what funeral home they're going to need. And from a pure, I'm a little competitive. From a pure competition standpoint, I mean, in many parts of the country, you have small, 50, 60, 70, 80 call firms a year. And, that one call last year, I think we did 4,000 calls. That one call to us is, big deal. You get one more call. But the way I look at it is that one call that we retain is one less call for a competitor. That may be that one call that, they just can't compete anymore and they're going to be out of the marketplace. I have responsibility to my family, my staff's family, not my competitors. I know it's a pretty aggressive stance, but at the end of the day, I have to make sure my staff can get paid and fed. So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, obviously paying attention to the details like that has been super successful for you. And you said when you took over in 1990, it was 190 calls,
something like that. 180, 190. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's been it's probably a lot of things, but what would you how do you attribute your growth to what over the last 30 years?
A lot of things, hiring the best talent available, even hiring when you don't need someone. You have someone that comes by and, oh my God, this person would be a rock star, but I don't need someone now. So we've always taken the sort of the strategy. If an A player comes by and you just grab that person. So getting the best and brightest talent that you can. And just taking some chances, but calculated chances. We started a discount cremation firm back in the mid 1990s when cremation was very low. And oh my God, why my quote unquote colleagues and competitors were, why are you doing that? You're gonna cannibalize your funeral home and it's gonna screw everything up. And it's sort of like, cremation is just a trend. Pay no attention to the guy behind the curtain, Wizard of Ozzy type stuff. Mm-hmm. And we said, no, I think there's something to this. And we decided to, open a discount firm. That's one of the things. The other things that we've been doing recently is we've been acquiring a lot of firms where their real estate is worth more than their enterprise value. And New England has, on the Northeast, has lots and lots and lots. You don't just have the Catholic funeral home or the Protestant. You have the French Catholic funeral home and the Irish Catholic funeral home and the Portuguese Catholic funeral home. Well, that was great back in the 50s and 60s and 70s when no one was being cremated, and everyone had a nice traditional funeral, but now you still get a lot of these 50, 60, 70 call firms. And, you just drive through some of these beautiful New England towns, and usually the nicest building in town is a nice funeral home that's worth, $2 million doing 60 calls a year. Well, you don't need a $2 million building to do 60 services a year, 3/4 of which are cremation. So we've been able to leverage that and acquire the goodwill and the pre-needs and the phone numbers of some of these funeral homes that, maybe didn't have a different exit strategy.
So you buy the business and leave the real estate, or are you getting the real estate along with that?
We've usually just had the owners sell the real estate off, and then we've acquired the pre-needs, the business, the goodwill of the company, and sometimes have the owner come along too. That works well if you actually have a brick and mortar building fairly close. But our discount firm, our cremation society, is all virtual. People aren't coming in. We do our model a little bit different than a lot of funeral homes that own discount firms. Is we have a Cremation Society of New Hampshire, which is our company, co-located in 8 of our 9 funeral homes. So unlike a lot of funeral homes that want to completely distance themselves from, this is our funeral home, this is our discount firm, we don't want the public to know that, we own both. We encourage it. We let families, yes, you still have to go online, you still have to make arrangements remotely, but once you've done that, you can use our arrangement, our facilities for services, for events, for engage us for anything else. So, our business model for our cremation side is a little bit different than most funeral homes. Most funeral homes that operate a discount firm try to keep them fairly separate. It may not even,
different names and everything, right?
Different names and everything. We co-locate our cremation society office in 8 of our 9 funeral homes. So the branding is there. We still require people to go online and make arrangements and not coming in. But once you get beyond that, they're coming in our main locations to pick up cremated remains, and they see beautiful chapels and facilities, often then decide to have memorial services or luncheons, graveside services. So we just run it a little bit differently.
I mean, I think the other thing you've done that's super innovative, like you said, the Cremation Society is completely virtual, but the fact that you've married it to funeral homes is like awesome and I think like courageous, right? Because a lot of folks are just afraid of that. But maybe tell us a little bit about like you've learned. You were one of the first ones to launch an online cremation product of any kind, where people could arrange online. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. When we launched that Cremation Society back again, it was the mid-90s. The internet was just coming on board, and I had this crazy idea that, the crazy idea really came to fruition because New Hampshire is a tiny state. We have 1.5 million people. And in order to make this work, we needed to treat basically our state as a metro area. So how do you bridge the gap? I mean, New Hampshire's still small, but it still can take you 3 or 4 hours to get from one, north and south or whatever. And people are not going to drive that far even to save some money. They might drive an hour, but they're not going to drive 3 hours, especially in the middle of a snowstorm. Yeah. So we decided, hey, let's have people go online and make arrangements. And we had the first e-commerce website where people could I go back and look at, the Wayback Machine and look at what our site looked like, way back then. It was like silly basic. And, here's an urn and here's this. And it's, but yeah, it worked. And we now have both at-need and pre-need I think we probably have about 300 pre-need families a month making arrangements online, and another 200 to 300 if they had to make arrangements for at-need families. But yeah, everything is done virtual. And then, of course, we have one of our licensed directors reaching back out to the family. And because we've taken that virtual leap, sort of the traditional funeral home staffing model no longer applies. I mean, one of my field directors are licensed. New Hampshire you have to be licensed to do pre-need, licensed to do at-need. One of our at-need counselors for the Cremation Society lives in Texas. One lives in Florida. So they're not even around here. They set their own schedules. They call families. But again, if it's all virtual, it doesn't really matter where they are or where they call. They may prefer to call families at 7 or 8 o'clock at night because that's more convenient. Well, your at-need funeral directors, unless they're on call, are not going to be wanting to call their families back that late. So yeah, it just changes the whole dynamic and the way we're able to manage the volume we have with a smaller workforce and FTE group. So
that's why, yeah, that's cool. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Any other funeral home having like remote workers. And you talked about how it's important is to hire A players. What's staffing been like for you the last like few years? Has it been a challenge?
It's it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a generational challenge because, as you know, folks that are coming out of mortuary school now want different things than funeral directors 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. So that in and of itself has been a challenge in terms of the work-life balance. We've actually, my field directors here, not my remote one, but the field directors here actually can work from home on certain days of the month if they hit certain, their satisfaction level. Like, hey, listen, your families are super satisfied. I feel like I don't want to have to take a PTO because I got to wait for the guy to come, fix my dishwasher or something. Well, great. From work from home, as long as they have all the technology, which is really, scanner, laptop. We have soft phones. Everybody has soft phones, so you don't need the hard phone to run. So yeah, people working from home all the time. But to answer your original question, they want different things. Luckily, with our, with the things that we offer in terms of working from home and benefits, even though New Hampshire and Vermont, where we have physical locations, are small states, if someone's going to come work here, we're probably going to get a shot at hiring them. So that's the good news. The bad news is that, just because we have a shot at someone doesn't mean it's someone that we think is going to be a good culture fit for us. And that's one of the things that we look at. You can train our processes. You can't train for attitude, and you can't train for someone to be nice. You either are nice or you're not nice. So we spend a lot of time looking at culture fits rather than, oh, I've only worked in a funeral home for 3 months. Well, if you're going to be a great culture fit, you're bright, we think you're going to work well with our environment, you may jump above the list for someone that might have been licensed for 5 or 10 years. Matter of fact, some of the more traditional funeral directors have a really hard time working in our environment just because of the technology we deploy and how much we rely, even for our traditional funeral home. We're virtually paperless for both of our companies, and amazing, great funeral directors just have a hard time working in that environment just because.
Yeah, that's so cool. And do you have, like when you hire a funeral director, do you expect them to also embalm, or do you kind of keep out all those responsibilities separate?
No, our staffing model tends to be very, very specialized. So my funeral directors are arrangers, about 20 of them, all they do is make arrangements, at-need arrangements. And we have another group of funeral directors that are, doing services and prep work. And then we have another group of folks that are doing transfers and cremations and things like that. And we have 4 teams. We have our admin team, our arranger team, our pre-need team, and our transfer and crematory team. So everything is separate. So my funeral directors aren't really on call that much, maybe one weekend every 6 or 7 weeks. They're not going out doing services. They're not going out doing transfers. So, which is a great environment if you like that. There's also a lot of funeral directors that say, I want the full breadth of funeral service. I want the exposure to the transfers and making the arrangements and doing the services and doing the prep. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not something that's going to work in our environment.
Yeah. If you were to go back to all of a sudden you're picking up a couple hundred call funeral home again, would you set it up that way, from the beginning, with specialized positions as well?
Yeah, we do. We incorporate them into our both our technology and our culture. We find the firms that we've purchased tend to be overstaffed. If a firm has 2 or 3 field directors and an admin person, in our world, once we bring it in with our process and systems, it's probably not an admin person and maybe one or two funeral directors. So yes, it's that's one of the things we look at for the acquisition is that it's going to be a different staffing model and a different set of procedures than the way it was operated beforehand.
Yeah, it's so cool, much more scalable, right?
It's way more scalable, and we learned that during COVID. It's like, oh my God, how are we going to make arrangements virtually? People don't want to. Well, we've been doing that for 15 years, so it was really not anything different than we do every day.
Yeah. Did you have the fully remote employees before COVID, or is that more recent?
We did. Oh no, we've had them for about 10 years. Yeah. We had, at one point, we had 4 remote funeral directors, arrangers. One of them ended up moving. Well, they were already moved away, but moving somewhere else where they couldn't do it anymore. And one of the other folks decided they wanted to come and work full. They lived close enough to us, even though they were remote. They ended up coming and getting a full-time job because they wanted full benefits and more hours. So now we have 2 of our 20 arrangers are remote.
Yeah, so cool. I remember, Kurt Sof here in Salt Lake City.
I don't think I do.
He's at Chank and Sof Mortuary. Well, I remember he pulled up your website back probably 20 years ago. Like I was like early in, like in my start. And I remember him pulling up your website and saying, check this website out. Like, because I think at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, there might have been like a video of you like on the site when you landed there, like you were talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like,
and I get so much shit for that. Oh my God. Yeah.
But at the time, I mean, that was like, no one was doing things like that. Right. So what are some other things that come to mind? Like that you've done? I mean, because there's been a lot of firsts here, right? First online cremation. I mean, it's like remote workers. Anything else come to mind about things that you've done before others?
So one of the things that we did that I was, and actually it's evolving still, is I believe we were the first funeral home to incorporate chat function into their website. We were with a group, and we were benchmarking Zappos. And Zappos, I don't know I'm sure you probably remember, it used to be the online shoe company.
Yeah.
And, what do a dozen field directors know about, buying shoes online? What does that have to do? So we were sitting in one of their offices, and they had just, keep in mind, this was years ago. So, e-commerce sites didn't have chat functions. What you would do is you'd be on a site and say, oh, do these shoes come in red? And you would either have to call the company or send them an email. And Zappos found out early on, is like, well, people are aborting their cart and they're not finishing the transaction because they're not going to wait for an email to come back, or they don't want to call. So they just said, the heck with it, I'm just going to go and, buy something else. So they realized when they incorporated a chat function, their sales increased, and, then you could have a conversation. Hey, people that bought the Amazon, people that bought the red shoes also bought the red belt that matched it, or whatever. I'm making that up. So we decided to incorporate chat into our business, and I didn't want to screw up our traditional funeral home, so I decided to do it with our discount firm. So I figured, why are people going to go on the chat? So they're going to say, oh, what are your hours of operation? I can't find the obituary from my uncle. Hey, what's the address of this place? I figured it would just be very, those types of things. But what we found out were people saying, does this urn come in blue? Can I also sign my wife up at the same time? It was most of the chats were so we said, hey, there's something to this. So then we realized that it was also now minimizing the phone calls coming in to the receptionist, because what happens if you call, the receptionist, they're not funeral directors, so they're passing off the call. So we created a chat team of funeral directors that were answering chat, so they could be the ones that would be dealing with, the pre-need or the at-need questions, have people get their answers right away. And then we added it to our funeral home as well. What we're doing now, we'll be rolling out probably in April, is the chat technology has changed so much with AI that we now have an AI chat. And we're actually teaching it as we speak to learn about our, couple hundred pages on our website. So the chatbot will probably be able to answer 80 or 90% of the questions. And if they can't answer it or just getting a little too deep, then it automatically be sent off to one of the folks of our chat team. So we're trying to leverage AI to answer all that and deal with all that stuff.
Yeah, you answered my next question, because I was going to say, are you going down that route? Because I know like Intercom and some of the best like chat tools online have got that ability to not just learn your website, but also go back historically into your chats, right? And learn how questions are answered. And,
we have given them, we've trained them on about 7,000 chat transcripts and 2 web pages. And that's what they're doing now, is they're learning all that stuff. I demoed where we were at about a month ago, and it was, they were answering most of the questions correctly, but not all of the questions correctly. I remember, and I was going to get this wrong, but we were doing a demo. I was like, oh, I want to have a public viewing for my uncle. Do we have to embalm for an open casket? And of course, in most states, in most funeral homes, like if you're having a public open casket viewing, you're going to have to embalm. And the chat bot said, oh no, you do not need to embalm for any sort of a viewing. Well, obviously that's the wrong answer. So we had to reach, so we want to make sure if it's never going to be 100% to roll it out, but we need to make sure that we're hitting the main salient issues relative to our chats. So that's what we're working on. That should be rolled out in another month or so.
That's awesome. Well, I think consumers are okay with it, right? I mean, like they understand, like, AI can take it so far, but yeah, it's important, I think, when you're training these LLMs that there are some guardrails set so it doesn't hallucinate too, But we've tested some stuff, but it's really it's interesting to see like how fast, in like a matter of like minutes or seconds, you can basically tell a bot, even inside ChatGPT, you can do a custom GPT and say like, you're going to use Phaneuf.net, and everything is based off this website. And then just even the ability to like answer questions about the dynamic content on your website, like your obits, right? Someone could go on and say, when's the service for Lorraine Smith? And it'll come back and say, there's 3 services for Lorraine Smith. There's Thursday night, Friday morning, and Friday, during the day.
Well, not only that, it can do that. And it also, because when people go into the chat, we have their email address. We could the chatbot's going to say, here's the information you want. And by the way, I have your email address. I'll send you the direct link to her online obituary.
Yeah. Awesome.
And by the way, if you're interested in sending flowers, here's the link for that, which we get a revenue share for that. So there's lots of different.
So much opportunity.
Things.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that you're, incorporating AI. Like I think, I mean, the chat
next step with AI, our next step with AI, is we want to use that for our virtual answering service, where we're not there yet, but we think our answering service is amazing. They do a great job, but it's not cheap. And does every call after hours necessarily have to go to the answering service and incur a charge? So I think virtual answering services with AIs can you can talk about what you're calling about. It can dispatch it to the right person. You don't have to start, for pre-need, press 1, for this, press 2, for this. You can talk and have conversations with a virtual AI. So we think we're hoping to roll that out next year. We've already started looking into the technology for that. It's out there.
Yeah.
It's just,
bland.ai. I think it's one of the, I've heard, good things about them. And you've seen some companies already cut like 2/3 of their customer support staff using Bland or other providers, right? So I think it's getting better, getting really good.
And eventually we want to be able to, and I'm sure we will, but we're not there yet, is actually bring AI and robots into our crematory and autonomous driving vehicles. And
heck yeah.
I mean, we actually had Boston University has a group that does, future technology, and they actually came here. We weren't quite big enough for them to take on this project, but we had them come in and look at, autonomous robots. Not with the hands. It would basically just minimize any you can't put this person in the crematory because 48 hours has elapsed, or hey, the paperwork hasn't been signed or whatever. Just Because we look at injury logs and, not that we have a lot of injuries, we're very safe, but, a lot of it happens in the crematorium lifting. And to the extent that you can incorporate, artificial intelligence and robots and technology into those things, efficiencies and safety and all those things.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. And even just like the more menial tasks, taking out the garbage, right? I'm sure even
driving
some
hearses.
landscaping. Yeah, driving the cars for sure. Yeah. That's autonomous driving's gotten so good in the last year. So, well, that's exciting. That's awesome, man. And I'm not surprised to hear what you're doing already. And it kind of, I think, that's the thing. The industry, I think, sort of expects to see that out of you. That's why, we wanted to have you
No
on
pressure.
on podcast. Yeah, it's just you're always forward thinking. Okay, so let me ask you this question: like, what are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of in your career and family and everything else?
I would say that probably what I've most proud of is about 5 years ago, we started a 501c3 nonprofit for indigent families. It's called the Phaneuf Family Foundation. My wife and I originally funded it. But now we're getting funded from grants and from families who are happy with our services, and for folks that might have overfunded a pre-need that didn't want to go to probate court to, access the funds. And it assists in our market area, which is we serve Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts. But our physical locations are in Maine and New Hampshire. So it will help indigent families or those in need, not just families that we serve, but any family who is served by a funeral home in New Hampshire and Vermont. So I think last year we served a couple hundred families, and about a third of them were not even one of our families. It was a family that, a competitor, and they can go on our Phaneuf Family Foundation website and request funds, to assist, oftentimes it's welfare assistance where welfare doesn't quite pay the full amount. The family just doesn't have the means to pay the differences. So, that's continued to grow. We're getting a pretty decent, corpus in terms of our funds there. We can help. The more money we get, the more money we can give to families in need. So as we know, there's lots of families out there that just don't plan ahead, don't have the funds. Welfare assistance, a lot of these small welfare departments are just overstretched and don't have the budget to assist families. So that's been, and we have a board of directors. A couple of them work at our facility, but we have other ones that have nothing to do with the funeral industry whatsoever. I think that's something I've been pretty proud of, and that's a legacy, because hopefully as we continue to grow our principle, it just can continue to help generations. We also use it to provide scholarships to mortuary school and provide scholarships for we have a Caregiver of the Year award, where the caregiver organization gets financial remuneration for filling out an application for what they've done to help the community. That's our nonprofit arm, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, that's awesome. That's really special. It's got to feel just amazing just to be able to provide that to these families in need, right? And especially when it's unexpected, I'm sure, tragic situations. Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. Now, on the flip side, challenges, there ever any times between 1990 when you took over and now, where you're just like, why am I doing this? How are we going to get out of this?
Oh yeah, there's been a number of occasions where my contact at SCI has been on speed dial and said, I'm going to push that button. I'm out. But yeah, as I said, we're working on our 6th generation now. So I think we have some obligation to continue that. But yeah, the challenges, at the end of the day, we're a large funeral home, but we're a small family business, and we deal with all the, the challenges in terms of staffing and family dynamics and succession planning and finances and expansion, all of that stuff. So we're not immune to that.
And your son that stepped in as the controller, is he planning on sticking with the business and taking over at some point, or is that decided?
So we have the way my son, our controller, is sort of back of the house doing all the finances, and my son-in-law who was a funeral director, not GM, is sort of the front of the house. They have a great relationship. So, they're not competing at all in terms of vying for, who needs to be the top dog in the business. I think they both understand their role. Matter of fact, I know they both understand their roles. And so, yeah, they're the heir apparents in terms of where we're going to be going in the future. So
that's really cool. When it comes to cremation, because you really are like just one of the best at this, what do you say to a funeral home that still seems concerned about like climbing cremation rates and everything? Is that something you stress over anymore? I mean, you embraced it 30 years ago. So what do you say to somebody that's still worried about that?
I mean, one of the things that we did early on, the markets that we compete in are already at an 80% cremation rate. Could go up a little more, but not a whole lot. But I remember back when we were 35 and 40%, we were budgeting as though we were 60 or 70% cremation rate. So that's one of the things that I would recommend is that if you're not there yet, think of and budget yourself as though, because it's going to be a matter of time. Might not be next year, but it's going to be in the future. And that's what you have to do. And I think a lot of firms try to play the middle. They try to compete. How do you compete with the high end, the low end, the middle end? And I think you got to sort of pick your battles and say, listen, I'm going to be a high end provider, and I'm going to provide. I can't compete on price, but I can compete on quality and level of service in customer experience. And I know I'm not going to get every call. Or hey, I'm going to compete on the low end. But I think it's the firms that vacillate going back and forth between a high end provider and they're not busy. Now they become a low end provider this week because they're going to cut their price in half to a third to keep that call. Those are the ones that's really not a sustainable business model. You've got to really pick your battles and decide where you want to be. There's really no middle ground in that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. Shifting gears a little bit more, outside of like owning the funeral homes, operating the funeral homes, you've also done other things in death care. Like, what are some of the funeral mall? Yeah, maybe tell us how those
crazy. Yeah, I started a company way back when called the Internet Cremation Society, and what it was again, you understand this is back in the late '90s, early 2000s, where funeral homes, if they had a website, then it was probably just an electronic billboard. They weren't putting prices. So what I did was I reached out to, I was involved with a bunch of cremation society owners. We had a little study group. And I said, I'll do your website and I'll promote it and I'll market it. So we had this clearinghouse where the consumer would select a zip code or an area code, I think we did it based on counties. And whoever bought that county, we would send traffic right to their website, making sure there was prices. And I would charge a monthly fee based on population. And at one point, I think we must have had 200 discount cremation firms on this thing. And it was great. And it was fun. And it was a nice little revenue stream, annuity coming in. And then actually ended up selling it to SCI.
Okay.
It was part of in Vermont, we bought 4 SCI firms that we rolled up to one larger firm. And part of the deal was they wanted this website that I had created for basically their brands, Neptune and, all their other discount brands in the marketplace, direct cremation. And so they own it now, and not quite sure what they're doing it, but that was a fun. We also started, I'm sure you remember Michael Turkowitz.
Yeah.
From FuneralNet. Yeah. Mike and I started, we started a company called Funeral Mall, where you would, first basically e-commerce, where you could buy urns and supplies and all kinds of stuff for the industry. So yeah, we did that, and I forget what happened.
Like who was buying? Funeral directors buying supplies or consumers?
It was field director. Product? It was field director based.
Okay.
Yeah, field director. Yeah. I mean, this sounds like big deal. A lot of people do it now, but again, this is back in the, the late '90s. So it was, sort of cutting edge then. Not so much anymore.
For sure.
I think we sold that off. I don't remember who we sold that to. We sold that to someone, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Turkowicz was the first episode of PodCasket. I pulled him out of retirement.
Was he really?
Yeah, you have to go back and listen to it. He talks about you in there, not surprisingly. But what about outside of death care? Any other like business ventures you've done or that you're working on now?
Yeah, I mean, we outside of our industry, I mean, funeral industry, we have some real estate holding companies that we hold, real estate outside of nothing to do with death care. So that's sort of something sort of making sure that we're looking at different revenue streams. I always have this fear that the sky's going to fall and one day we're going to wake up and not have a funeral business anymore. God knows why. I just think about that at night. Don't know why. But yeah, you don't want to commit your entire, your entire future to one revenue stream or one. But we've passed on a lot of things. And one of the things that we look at, we have we've created what we call a purpose vision business model, where we look at a lot of things. And one of the things we look at is what are our core competencies? What are we really good at? And we're good at a lot of things in funeral service. One of the things we looked at for years is the whole pet, the pet cremation business. Yeah. And that could be very lucrative, but we looked at it hard way back when, and we said, I think it's going to be distracting to our main focus of funeral service and death care. And I don't think it's our core competency. I don't think it's something that, so we decided to pass. I mean, there's been a lot of, same thing with funeral homes. I know there's some private equity firm consolidators out there that just buy funeral homes just because they can. We probably passed on more funeral homes, even though the price was right. I mean, the price was for, pennies on the dollar, but just because you can buy it doesn't mean you should buy it. And it takes some discipline and making sure, again, it gets back to our core competency and what we're good at. And if it's going to impact our day-to-day business and how we continue to succeed, that's what we ask ourselves every day, if it's something we think we want to be involved with.
And so as part of that, like with your like expansion plans and looking at opportunities, is that also include like geography? Like, are you looking at it and saying like we're a New England organization, or is that something where you have plans to expand further out?
We have no set. We've certainly talked about opening discount firms throughout especially if it's virtual and you have trade firms. But I don't think we can provide the same high quality and level of service that we can, even with our, I think we must have 600 or 700 5-star Google reviews, even with our discount firm. And I think that's gone a long way to our success in terms of getting references and referrals from hospice nurses and families. Yeah, we could expand and do more and, get so mediocre reviews and results at that, but that's just not us. So we want to make sure, plus I'm a little bit of a control freak. I just need to make sure that the firms that we acquire, we can still use, the same technology, same services, same servers, same staff, same transfer staff. So we just, all that sort of factors into those decision-making processes in terms of how we can expand. There's firms out there, they own, funeral home in Illinois, in Mississippi, and here, and that's great. And they're making money, but that's not our business model in terms of being able to be very, very efficient with the staff that we have. When I tell some, friends or different acquaintances that how many staff we have doing the calls we're doing, I said, how can you possibly serve that many families with that stuff? A lot of it is our processes and our systems, and again, leveraging technology and making sure that we're super efficient in measuring and metrics and how we're doing it. So,
and how many? I should have asked this sooner, probably. But how many like actual facilities are you operating out of today? So 4,000 calls. But...
we have. I should know this. I think. We have 8 brick and mortar businesses, 7 of which are cremation societies, as I said, is co-branded. We actually have a standalone business office for one of our cremation societies offices on the seacoast. We're looking to actually acquire a brick and mortar funeral home there as well. We're doing great business out there. But what we found is that geographically, people will use you, especially if you make it easy for them, the way we're doing it. So you can do the cremation, but they may not use you for services and ceremonies because you're a little bit too far away. So we find a good number of our cremation families will use us for the cremation, like a commodity, but then they'll end up calling either another funeral home or going to the country club or something. So the good news is that we've been able to build this, virtually to a large number. The bad news is I think we're leaving some money on the table to not have a facility close enough for them to be able to have memorial services and gatherings and luncheons and functions and things like that. So,
do you know what number of your calls would like never step foot in one of your buildings?
So for our funeral home, that's 0. For our cremation society, I would say of the 3,100 or so calls that we're doing through our discount firm, if you're not counting the fact of them coming in to potentially pick up cremated remains, if we're not shipping or hand delivering, 95% never step foot in the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are they still, like you said, they might be doing services somewhere else or with someone else. What else is different? Are they still doing would you still in that case, would the family still do an online memorial obituary, share that out to the community?
Yep. It's all value added. I mean, a lot of, as you probably know, a lot of discount firms are really bare bones direct disposers where, hey, listen, we're doing the bare minimum. We're not doing obituaries. We're not doing, in our case, the price point is much lower to get your loved one cremated. But beyond that, you can do ID viewings. You can do family attended cremations. You can come in and pick out urns and memorial. We'll do obituaries. We'll do graveside services. Of course, at a price point.
Yeah.
But we're just not. Our average direct cremation, even though we're quote unquote discount firm, is is over $2,000, which is certainly not not like a traditional funeral home, but it's significantly higher than what most discount firms are working off.
Yeah. That's interesting. And how many of your services then transact online?
So for our discount firm, you mean?
I'm even wondering on your funeral home, if you're like above average there, I kind of expect that you would be.
So as I said, for our cremation society, families can't even come in.
They have to transact online.
Yeah. I mean, there is an exception. The only exception is if we know in advance that they are going to be using one of our facilities for a memorial gathering or a service, then we want them to come in because they're picking out the rooms and they're picking out the flowers and all that. We know that's going to be a higher than average sale, so they're physically coming in. They're paying for it. They're paying an in-service consultation fee of $400, $395, but that's bundled into some of the packages that we have. If they're not, then they're not coming in. They can't. It's not something. And if they don't have technology, they can't do it. Then we just say, well, our offering may not be right for you, but we do have a full service traditional funeral home that we could still offer cremation at a different price point. And miraculously, they find a way to go online when they realize that they're going to end up having to pay a couple $1,000s more. Yeah. Someone that doesn't have a computer all of a sudden does. So that has not been a barrier at all.
Oh, that's awesome. And so,
like I said, I was going to say, a lot of times and this is not anything new. They think they're calling about the price, but at the end of the day, they're calling. It's basically how you make them feel, because we get lots and lots, hundreds of shoppers every quarter, and that's really it. Price is important, and a lot of people think of it as a commodity, but you got to treat them right, and you got to make them feel good about the interaction. And we're fully honest with them. We're saying, the reason we have you go online is we can do this at a much more affordable price. You're going to be doing some things on your own. If that doesn't work for you, then we have a traditional funeral home that does. And we actually have people flip quite frequently. At the end of the day, I don't care, not in a mean way. I don't care which of our brands a family uses, as long as they use one of them. So I have no problem if someone calls our discount firm and our full service experience would be a better value. Like if they have to do a life insurance assignment or payment plans or have to come in for whatever reason. On the flip side, if someone calls our funeral home, we know the family's going to be struggling, and we'll cut the arrange in a nice way. We'll cut the arrangements off right there and say, "Hey, Joe, we have a discount brand that I think is going to be a better value for you. It's going to make more sense. So it's going to be a little more work on you, and then we leave them with the brochure, the website, and they go on. So again, we're it's sort of different quivers in our arrows in our quiver. We just want families to be treated correctly and pick the brand that makes the most sense for them.
Yeah, and you're not probably not seeing much in terms of life insurance assignments with the discount brand, because it's
we
just
don't even offer
cash.
It's
cash.
It's payment. Yeah, it's payment prior to moving forward. Yep, paid for. No payment plans, no life insurance. Yeah.
And when you mentioned payment, what do you do for payment plans?
For our funeral home, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nothing in particular. We'll work with families if they, need to pay off some of the balances or whatever. Like most funeral homes, we'll work with them to, once you do a down payment or deposit, maybe we don't do the final interment, or maybe you don't get the earn right away until you pay for it. But yeah, we'll work with our families and our full service brand, because again, we're not just dealing with cremation. We're dealing with, sometimes $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 funerals too. So.
Yeah. No, and I was wondering, because I actually had a last episode recorded here was with Chris Seal, and we were talking about kind of at-need financing there for a minute, because it's just I've heard horror stories in some cases, but also just like some creative things people are doing and trying to figure that out. And we've also, I mean, in the 20 years I've been in the profession, it's like, it seems like there's been so many at-need financing companies just like come and go, and it like never seems to really stick. So I was curious if you were doing something different.
Yeah, no particular, it's sort of on a case-by-case basis. And we actually work with a company that does online crowdfunding. Might have heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not that everyone takes us up on it, but they like the idea that it's an option. So
yeah. That's all. Yeah, it's like easy way to go too. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah.
So what do you hope to see? Like, I mean, and thanks for like sharing some of your forward thinking ideas, because I was actually at a conference, speaking at a conference last year. I mentioned the idea of like, I think you guys need to be open-minded about robots doing a lot of your work, right? Mm-hmm. Like just some of the looks I got. So thanks for sharing that. But what are some of the things you hope to see happen in funeral service going forward?
Well, the big one is licensing change. I mean, there's so many amazing people that want to work in funeral service. In some states, antiquated, you got to embalm 50 people and be an embalmer and do this and do a 2-year apprenticeship. A lot of it's the old boy network. Is that, a lot of these funeral boards are run by competitors, and they don't want to make it easy for folks to get their license and come in. I think that's coming. Even in our tiny state of New Hampshire, we've definitely had some movement into that. To me, that's the biggest barrier to our industry, to get amazing people to come in that aren't, really 80, 90% cremation rate. You have to embalm. In our state, we have, I don't know, we used to have 130 funeral homes. I think we're now down to 70 or 80, most of which don't embalm 50 people in 2 years. Wow. Silly regulations. I think people getting a lot worked up on alkaline hydrolysis and natural organic reduction and all of that. I just think that's it's great. We're not embracing it. One of the things that we do, we get this we get phone calls all the time that you guys pollute. And I had a lady call me. Of course, I'm the one that gets all these crazy phone calls. The lady is calling, and she called the Cremation Society and said, why don't you offer alkaline hydrolysis? And I said, well, it is allowed in Vermont where we operate, and it's just not financially, it just doesn't make sense. I don't think there's enough people that are going to do it. It would have to charge more. In New Hampshire, it's not allowed. And we get back to this back and forth argument about this thing. And she said, you guys pollute the atmosphere, CO2. And I said, yep. I said, we do. but we actually buy carbon offsets to offset 100% of our CO2 footprint for our cremations. We work with a company called Native Energy. They're out of Vermont, and they fund projects that mitigate carbon throughout the world. So I said, yes, at this point, I can't make the cremation process any more green, but I can tell you our cremation process is carbon neutral. And do you buy carbon offsets yourself to offset your driving and the things that you do? And she ended up signing right online with the Cremation Society. Right, as I had her on the phone. Yeah. So she was calling to yell at me as an advocate about how we were polluting, and she ended up becoming an advocate of what we're doing. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
I have looked into, there's ways that you can actually do carbon capture, and then but we can't scale it, and it's being done at huge manufacturing facilities. I actually spoke to a scientist who was doing it, and he said it would cost you multiple millions of dollars to do it for your facility, but the technology is there and the prices are coming down. So probably 10 years from now. So that, to me, that's something that would be really interesting, is to be able to have these carbon, basically the CO2 cycles back in, and somehow it's mitigated and put into the ground or whatever. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm a finance guy. But so those are the things that sort of excite me, the sort of things we're looking at in the future. Again, you don't want to look, where we're going to be 2 or 3 years from now. It's 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. So I think, those are some exciting things.
No, and it does sound like, licensing is a big deal. And it's just, again, to try to get good people and get them to come and stay. Mm-hmm. What does a carbon credit cost? Sorry, just curious.
It's really inexpensive. I had we have 5 crematories. 4 of the 5 are B&L systems, and the owner of B&L's, Dr. Steve Looker, I sent him we've been doing carbon offsets for probably 10 years, and I told him what we were doing and how much CO2, and he figured it out, and we ended up spending. We do end up spending. I don't want to give you the exact number, but somewhere between $500 and $1,000 a month to offset our carbon footprint. Obviously, it varies from month to month because the cremation. But if you look at over time, and it's not like I'm adjusting this and paying someone to do a carbon analysis to me on a monthly basis. But we look at it every few years. But somewhere between $500 and $1,000. So, that's not a lot of money. To be,
if you boil that down, though, it sounds like you're maybe like a few dollars per cremation or something. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Let's see. Hold on a second.
You have a calculator on your desk. I can hear it.
I
That's
have
awesome.
An old HP.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you got me flustered. I'm trying to think of the math. Hold on. 12, 35. Yeah. Under $5.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's super interesting
It's funny for a very short period of time on our website for our cremation society, we actually had an option that said, would you be interested in and I forgot the wording that we have, but basically saying, you've made arrangements for, I think we just did this pre-need. I don't think we did it at need. Would you be interested in adding X amount of dollars to your pre-arrangement to offset your carbon footprint at the time of cremation? Thinking, people are really into this, the environment, and we had 0 people, 0 take rate.
Oh, wow.
So it's great if someone else is paying for it, not so much if you have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Data, that's awesome, man. You learn a lot with data like that.
So we took that option down.
No, that's cool. But I'm sure it helps. Obviously that lady that called in, right? it helps to be able to say that you're doing that, since some people are concerned about it. So.
Yeah, and it makes you feel good, and we think we're good, as best as we can, good stewards of the environment, and so
yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate all the time here. I got one more question for you, which is and this could go anywhere. Who knows? Can you tell us something about you that we haven't already learned already that would surprise us?
Something that in college I slept in a casket. We had an old beat up casket that my dad had, and we decided we had these old bunk beds in the dorm room, and it was like a triple oversized casket. And a friend of mine was a woodworker, converted it into like a bed, and we brought it into the dorm room. My roommate at the time wasn't overly excited about it, but it was nice. I was able to put like a queen mattress in there, and had we pounded the lid against the wall, and it was fun. Late night conversations when you were talking to a young woman and say, "Well, I have a casket in my bedroom. You want it in my dorm room? Would you like to come see it? No way, you don't." So yeah, that worked for a while.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Never heard anybody doing that before either. I don't know, man. Well, thanks so much, buddy. This has been great.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your time and your friendship and just the partnership over the years, and just also just the bar you've set, honestly, for the entire profession. Like I say, people talk about you and pay attention to what you're doing. You've been seen as a forward thinker, a legend in death care as long as I've been around. And so it's just, honor to be able to.
You're welcome. And keep doing what you're doing. We love your technology push. It seems like every week you guys are coming out with a new offering and new enhancement. So you're not sitting back on your laurels and just saying, "Hey, this is it." Yep. It's great. So I think that's what we need. We need more of that.
We're trying to launch stuff before you do it on your own. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
I get some ideas for you. If you want to call me back later, I got a short list of things I'd like you to incorporate. So,
well, you definitely, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks again. And thanks everybody for listening to PodCasket, where we interview the legends in death care. Subscribe to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. Thank you. It's